Did she simply close the door of her father's house and walk away? And was it a long way through the tailor shops of Busan to the wharf where the boat waited to take her to an island whose name she'd only recently learned, on whose shore a man waited, turning her photograph?
In her 1932 anthology, Picture Bride, Kathy Song portrays the journey of valiant women from their homes in Korea to the brutal sugar plantations in Hawaii. In building this frontier, these women were fearless pioneers who made an impact in the future generations of Korean Americans by breaking the boundaries of their traditionally Confucian gender roles. By doing so, they built the first Korean American communities and are unsung heroes who helped their colonized homelands gain independence from Japan.
In 1903, Hawaii, the world's main sugar producer, was starved of workers. Their sugarcane remained unharvested, and farmers were fatigued. To try to remedy the situation, the U.S. Minister Horace Allen traveled to Korea, holding events that promised potential workers with a better life in Hawaii. He was successful. By 1905, 7,500 Koreans had immigrated to Hawaii. These newcomers weren't exactly welcomed with heartwarming embraces. Workers faced grueling labor and excessive hours. To cope, many workers turned to outlets such as gambling and drinking. Concerned plantation owners began to believe that bribes for these men would settle down their unruliness and increase productivity. The problem was, there weren't enough women. Only 1 in 10 Korean immigrants were female, and the majority of them had been married prior to coming to the US. The best solution was a picture marriage. The term picture marriage refers to the process in which a matchmaker would attempt to connect Korean women with Korean men living in Hawaii through the exchange of photographs in hopes of having them wed. The groom would pay the appropriate fees for travel, and the picture bride, as they were called, would travel to Hawaii and they would marry at the immigration station. This system was originally created under the Gentleman's Agreement, formed between the US and Japanese governments. Many Korean women saw a picture marriage as an opportunity to escape from the traditional limitations placed on them. Oppression of women was common. Women were frequently denied opportunities, forced to be concubines, abused by their husbands and mother-in-laws, and pushed into unwanted arranged marriages. Indeed, as one picture bride put it, she had never wanted to marry a peasant boy from the other side of the hill, nor tread the same path as other women she had seen. She thought she had been cut out for a better lot than that of a village peasant wife. To many picture brides, Hawaii was a place where they could become an agent of their own lives, living a future of their own choosing. However, not all were in favor of the system's intentions. From a traditional Confucian perspective, daughters venturing to a foreign land was shameful because it fractured the family. Some considering picture marriage were accused of being prostitutes, with their families locking up their daughters to prevent defiance. But with aspirations of a better life, some women snuck out to board ships leaving for Hawaii anyway. From the perspective of the state of Hawaii, as well as that of plantation owners, picture marriage was an opportunity to further agricultural production. Ministers promoted the bride's ability to heighten the morality of male workers in the plantations and help women of marriage age to find their husbands in Hawaii. The combination of governmental immigration agreements, private intermediaries, and the women's interest in finding a husband made the picture bride system a success. Between 1910 and 1924, an estimated 1,000 Korean picture brides came to Hawaii.
With the dream of a better life, these women endured a 14-day nausea-filled voyage with little food or water. Upon arrival, however, many were met with harsh realities and experienced despair. Some grooms had sent fraudulent pictures taken when they were much younger or staged photo shoots flaunting wealth that wasn't their own. 23-year-old Soo Yeon was distraught, quote, "because my husband sent his 25-year-old handsome-looking photo. He came to the pier, but I see he's really old looking. He was 45 years old, 25 years older than I am," end quote. Mrs. Yoo Sung-gi left Korea to become a picture bride at 16, and her husband, who claimed to be 40, was 75. Even when settling into their living spaces, too many realized their expectations of prosperity were for naught. One picture bride stated that their, quote, "first stove was a tin can, and my house was constructed of wooden slate that offered no privacy. Their new homes were, quote, worse than the servant quarters back home." Escape from this marital nightmare was near impossible. Brides, without money to return home, found themselves forced to get married. What's more, the women knew their families would not accept them, as traditional Korean values frowned strongly upon not just leaving one's homeland, but also divorce. Despite these horrors, these resilient women adapted to the new environment by taking on new positions of power. Many not only supported their hard-working husbands at the plantations, but also took laundering, cooking, and tailoring jobs outside the customary roles in the household, more impressively in cases when their older husbands were unable to work. As picture bride Park Soon-ha would state, quote, "I had labor in the fields too. I cut my fingers, bled all over the place. I worked in a pineapple plantation. My old man couldn't work more than 15 days out of a month." End quote. By doing so, they altered the traditional gender dynamics in Korean marriage. Bride Sunya Shin Sunu would elaborate, quote, "I had never worked a day in my life, and now I was taking in other people's laundry, working so hard that my hands got swollen and bled." End quote. These changes in power they held is apparent when considering what life was like back home in Korea. Back home, women were prohibited from receiving higher levels of education and confined to at-home duties. But in America, they were finding new roles and capabilities in the workforce.
Picture brides worked to expand their influence in the community by actively serving in Korean churches. As the daughter of a picture bride, Margaret Pei recalls in her memoir, her mother, Hee Kyung-kwan, was key to several church organizations. Pei writes, she helped form the Methodist Ladies' Aid Society that provided a network of services reaching every Korean family in the community. So dedicated were the society members that no family went without food or a roof over their heads. All these services were rendered despite the fact that every woman was burdened with the heavy responsibilities of her own. While they gained individual power, picture brides also subverted gender norms by coming together politically in new ways, best seen in their support of the Korean nationalist movement in Hawaii. When news of the Japanese atrocities in their home country reached them, Koreans in the US launched a full-scale independence movement. Taking inspiration from the Koreans who fearlessly risked their lives in protests in the mainland, picture brides in Hawaii held similar peace marches in March 1919. Wearing traditional Korean hanbok, the women marched in Honolulu, singing patriotic songs. Brides established the Korean Women's Relief Society, which raised money selling copies of the Declaration of Korean Independence Manifesto, signed by patriots in Korea. In total, they were able to raise an impressive $200,000, which was donated to families back home whose relatives were killed or injured in the Korean demonstrations, called the March 1st movement.
Despite unthinkably challenging lives, their arrival in Hawaii in the early 1900s serves as an important benchmark in expanding the Korean frontier in America. Fearlessly responding to deception, hardship, and imperialism in their homeland, they modeled a new way of being Korean in America. While their dreams for wealth and education were generally unrealized, their humanitarian and patriotic efforts transcended America.
They crossed many previously unattainable boundaries as they rewrote history for Korean women. Being pioneers, they forged new paths and lifestyles for themselves away from the comfort of their homes by challenging traditional expectations. During a time when women were expected to attend to their husbands at home, the picture brides seized job opportunities and collaborated to create charitable organizations, which contributed to the success of the Korean independence movement. Picture brides boldly crossed many frontiers. They not only crossed the physical frontier in the expansion of the Koreans in a new geographic landscape, but also crossed cultural and social boundaries, redefining what it meant to be a Korean woman in America. Their arrival normalized the skewed gender ratio in the Korean population in Hawaii, making a second generation of Koreans possible. This American-born generation acculturated hastily into American values as they were exposed to the Western values early on.
The author Lee Kyung-mi of the novel Picture Brides symbolizes their lives as waves. Pearl, a daughter of a picture bride, says, quote, "Waves continue across the widespread sea, breaking relentlessly against the shore. The waves never pause, even though they know they will break. I will live like that. Like a wave, I will collide with the world with my whole being. I can do it knowing I will always have a home in my mother to encircle me in their embrace."